Donald Trump just launched a war against Iran. 500 targets hit in a single night. Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, Kermanshah, the whole country shaking. The supreme leader's compound reduced to rubble. Iran's defense minister dead. The IRGC commander dead. Oil markets in freefall. And standing in front of his cameras at 2:30 in the morning, Trump looked like a man who had just done something he had been waiting to do for a very long time. But here is the thing about Donald Trump. He does not lose sleep over Iranian missiles. He does not lose sleep over Iranian drones. He does not even lose sleep over the Strait of Hormuz, at least not in the way the analysts on cable news are telling you. What keeps Trump up at night is something different, something older, something that has survived every Israeli airstrike, every American sanction, every drone assassination, every regime change fantasy Washington has ever cooked up. It is called the axis of resistance. And today we are going to explain exactly what it is, how it works, why it exists, and why, even after the most devastating opening strikes in Middle Eastern history, Donald Trump knows it is not finished with him yet. Let's start with the thing everyone gets wrong. When you hear axis of resistance in Western media, the image you are sold is simple. Iran snaps its fingers and its proxies jump. Tehran gives the order. Hezbollah fires the rocket. The Houthis launch the drone. It is presented as a command structure, clean, centralized, obedient. That is not how it works, not even close. The axis of resistance is better understood as a network of aligned interests, not a chain of command. Iran is the senior partner. Iran provides the funding. Iran provides the weapons, the training, the logistics, the strategic direction. But Iran cannot force any of these groups to do something that goes against their own interests. It can ask, it can incentivize, it cannot order, and we have proof of that. During the 12-day war in June 2025, the first round of U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran, Tehran called Hezbollah and said, "We need you in this fight." Hezbollah looked at its own situation, its leadership decimated, its military capacity degraded, its political position in Lebanon precarious, and said no. It sat out the conflict entirely. Iran could do nothing about it. So when Trump's advisors brief him on the axis of resistance, the first thing they have to explain is that this is not a monolith. It is a coalition, and coalitions are complicated. Now, let's talk about who is actually in it. Iran is the anchor, the only state actor in this network, with a conventional military, a government, a nuclear program, and a seat at the table. Everyone else is a non-state armed group operating inside someone else's country. Moving westward from Iran, you have the Iraqi Shia militias operating in northern Iraq. These are armed factions aligned with Iranian interests, who have historically targeted U.S. military installations in the region, mostly symbolic strikes, a way of sending a message that America is not welcome. Their influence, however, has been shrinking. The Iraqi government has been reasserting itself. American forces have largely withdrawn from Iraq and Syria. The leverage these militias can exercise today is significantly reduced. Syria used to be the linchpin of the entire network. The Assad government was an essential state partner. It provided the geographic corridor connecting Iran to Lebanon, allowing weapons, fighters, money, and intelligence to flow directly from Tehran to Hezbollah's doorstep. That corridor was severed in December 2024, when Assad's government collapsed in one of the most spectacular political implosions in recent history. The land bridge is gone. The Syrian pillar of the Axis is gone. Then there is Hezbollah in Lebanon, historically the crown jewel of this network. Hezbollah has a sophisticated military capability, a massive rocket arsenal, a professional officer corps, and the ability to open a northern front against Israel at any moment. At its peak, it was Iran's most powerful instrument of regional pressure. But after 2 years of sustained Israeli operations in southern Lebanon, the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the targeting of its command structure, the decimation of its military infrastructure, Hezbollah is in a deeply compromised position. It is not destroyed, but it is not what it was. Hamas in Gaza, the only Sunni member of this coalition, which tells you something about the pragmatism of these alliances, has been in a state of near collapse since October 2023. 2 years of the most intense urban warfare in modern history has reduced Hamas's military capability to something closer to survival mode than operational capacity. Yahya Sinwar is dead, Ismail Haniyeh is dead, the military infrastructure is shattered, and then there are the Houthis in Yemen, who, unlike almost every other member of this coalition, are still standing, still operational, and occupying perhaps the most strategically valuable piece of geography in the entire network. We will come back to them, because this is where it gets interesting. To understand why this network matters and why Trump fears what is left of it, you need to understand what it was designed to do. Iran is a large country, a proud country, a country that has been at war with American and Israeli interests in one form or another since 1979. And for most of that time, Iran has understood something fundamental about its own strategic situation. It cannot win a direct conventional military confrontation with the United States. It does not have the air power. It does not have the naval power. It does not have the projection capability. What Iran does have is geography and patience. The axis of resistance is Iran's answer to conventional military inferiority. Instead of building an army that can meet the United States on equal terms, which is impossible, Iran spent 40 years building a network of armed groups positioned around its adversaries that can impose costs from every direction simultaneously. Think of it this way: Iran is the porcupine, and the axis of resistance is the quills. Before you can strike the animal, you have to remove every quill that will puncture you on the way in. And that is exactly what Israel has been doing for the last 2 years, systematically, deliberately, patiently, removing each quill one by one until the path to Iran itself was clear enough to walk. The Houthis got hammered by U.S. naval operations. The Syrian corridor got severed when Assad fell. Hezbollah got degraded in Lebanon. Hamas got decimated in Gaza. And then, with the porcupine largely stripped of its defenses, Israel and the United States walked in. That is the strategic logic of what happened on February 28, 2026. Israel did not wake up one morning and decide to bomb Iran. This was a window that had been carefully created over 2 years of preparation, and a window that every Israeli strategist understood would not stay open forever. So what can the axis of resistance actually do right now? Today, in the middle of this war, let's go through it honestly. The Iraqi militias, limited. American forces have largely left Iraq. There are fewer targets. The Iraqi government is consolidating authority and does not want its territory used as a battleground. The contribution here is mostly symbolic. Syria, 0. The government is gone. The corridor is closed. Syria is no longer a factor. Hamas, 0 offensive capacity. Hamas is trying to survive. It is not going to open a new front. Hezbollah, this is the one that matters, and the answer is complicated. Hezbollah is damaged, but Hezbollah is not dead. It still has rockets, it still has trained fighters, it still controls significant territory in southern Lebanon, and the reports coming out today suggest that Iranian advisors have been moving through southern Lebanon in recent weeks, briefing Hezbollah commanders one by one, preparing them for exactly this scenario, explaining the command structure, what is expected of them, what weapons are being supplied. So Hezbollah is going to enter this conflict. The question is how? And the honest answer is, not the way it would have entered 3 years ago. What you are going to see from Hezbollah is what military analysts call nuisance operations. Rockets into open fields in northern Israel, enough to trigger air raid sirens, enough to force evacuations, enough to demonstrate that Hezbollah is in the fight. If the conflict intensifies and Iran's position deteriorates, those rockets will start targeting military installations, radar sites, bases in northern Israel. And if it looks like the Iranian regime itself is on the verge of collapse, if the survival of the entire network is at stake, then Hezbollah goes all in. Because without Iran, there is no funding, no weapons, no future. Hezbollah's escalation is calibrated to Iran's survival curve. The worse Iran looks, the harder Hezbollah fights. And then there are the Houthis. The Houthis are the wild card that keeps Trump's national security team awake. Here is why. The Houthis sit on the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the narrow choke point at the southern end of the Red Sea where roughly 15% of global trade passes on its way between Asia and Europe. Ships coming from the Persian Gulf, loaded with oil from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar, they have to pass through here to reach European markets. Ships carrying manufactured goods from Asia to Europe pass through here in the other direction. The Houthis do not need to sink every ship. They do not need a navy. They do not need air superiority. They just need to make the passage feel dangerous enough that insurance companies quadruple their rates overnight. The moment that happens, shipping companies do the math and discover it is cheaper to sail around the entire African continent via the Cape of Good Hope than to pass through a war zone with a missile on your hull. We have already seen this movie. The Houthis spent most of 2024 doing exactly this, disrupting Red Sea shipping to the point where major carriers rerouted entirely, adding weeks and millions of dollars to every journey. Global supply chains absorbed that shock. They did not like it. Now imagine that happening simultaneously with a Strait of Hormuz disruption in the north. The Strait of Hormuz is the other choke point, the narrow passage between Iran and Oman through which 20 million barrels of oil flow every single day. Nearly 20% of global oil consumption. Almost all of Qatar's LNG exports. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, the UAE, every major Gulf producer ships through here. There is no alternative at scale. Iran controls the northern coastline of the strait. It has fast boats, it has mines, it has coastal missile batteries. It does not need to formally close the strait to make it functionally unusable. It just needs to hit 2 or 3 tankers and let the insurance markets do the rest. During the 12-day war in 2025, intelligence reports indicated that Iran was actively loading naval mines onto vessels in preparation for a strait closure operation. The operation was stopped, not by the United States, not by Israel, but by China. Beijing picked up the phone and told Tehran, "Do not do this, because China imports between 40 and 50% of its oil through that strait." A closure hurts Iran's enemies, but it also hurts China, and Iran cannot afford to lose China right now. That phone call may or may not happen again. And that is what makes the strait question the single most consequential variable in this entire conflict. Now let's talk about what Iran is actually trying to accomplish, because this is where Trump's real fear comes into focus. Iran is not trying to defeat the United States. That is not on the table. Nobody in Tehran thinks they can outfight the U.S. military in a sustained conventional war. That is not the goal. The goal is to survive long enough to make the war too expensive to continue. Here's the calculation. The United States, especially under Trump, operates with an assumption of impunity. You saw it in Venezuela. You saw it in Yemen. You saw it in Syria. America strikes, nobody strikes back effectively, and the operation continues at whatever pace and scale Washington decides. Trump has become increasingly bold precisely because there have been no real consequences. Iran's strategy is to introduce consequences. not winning consequences, deterrent consequences. A U.S. Navy vessel struck by an Iranian missile, an American fighter jet downed over the Gulf, a U.S. pilot captured after ejecting, alive, on Iranian television in a flight suit. Any one of these events changes the political calculus in Washington overnight. Because Trump is not just a commander-in-chief, he is a politician who watches his approval ratings, and the American public, which broadly supported this operation in its first 48 hours as a decisive blow against a nuclear threat, will have a very different reaction when the body bags start coming home. Iran does not need to win. Iran needs to make the cost of continuing the war higher than the cost of stopping it. And then, at the moment of maximum American hesitation, Iran needs someone to pick up the phone and offer a way out. Oman, almost certainly. A back channel, a ceasefire framed as a diplomatic achievement for both sides. Trump gets to declare victory. Iran gets to survive. That is the playbook. That is what Iran has done before, and that is exactly what Trump fears. Not that Iran wins, but that Iran bleeds the operation slowly enough that the off-ramp starts looking more attractive than the destination. Now zoom out, because there is a longer game being played here that goes beyond the immediate military exchange. The stated objective of Operation Epic Fury is to permanently eliminate Iran's nuclear program. Permanently. That word is doing a lot of heavy lifting, because here is what military strikes cannot do. They can destroy centrifuges, they can collapse tunnels, they can kill scientists, but they cannot destroy knowledge. Every Iranian nuclear physicist who survived yesterday's strikes still knows exactly what they knew the day before. Every calculation, every design parameter, every enrichment protocol that exists in human memory, none of that was in a building that got bombed. The best-case scenario for this operation, based on previous U.S. and Israeli intelligence assessments, is a setback of 1 to 3 years, not elimination. A setback, and every country watching this conflict, every middle power sitting in a difficult neighborhood with powerful enemies, is drawing the same lesson that North Korea drew 20 years ago. The only reliable protection against this kind of attack is to already have the bomb before the bombs arrive. If Iran survives this war in any coherent form, its nuclear program does not go away. It accelerates, with more urgency, more secrecy, and more popular support from an Iranian population that has just watched its cities get bombed. That is the paradox at the heart of Operation Epic Fury, and that, more than any missile, more than any proxy group, more than any straight closure, is what keeps the strategists in Washington up at night. So where does this leave us? The axis of resistance has been systematically dismantled over 2 years of careful preparation. The Syrian corridor is gone. Hamas is broken. Hezbollah is damaged. The Iraqi militias are marginal. But the Houthis are still there, sitting on one of the most strategically valuable pieces of geography on the planet. And Hezbollah, even degraded, even damaged, is still capable of opening a second front that forces Israel to fight in 2 directions simultaneously. And Iran itself still has ballistic missiles, still has the ability to saturate air defenses with mass launches, still has the geographic position to threaten the Strait of Hormuz, still has the ability to impose the kind of losses that make a U.S. president start thinking about his approval ratings. Trump launched this war because the window was open, because the porcupine had been stripped of most of its quills, because the conditions for this operation may never be this favorable again. But some quills remain, and the animal is still alive. The question this war will answer, in the next 72 hours, in the next week, in the next month, is whether what is left of the axis of resistance is enough to close that window before Trump gets everything he came for. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Does Iran survive this? Does the strait close? Does Hezbollah go all in? And is this the end of the Islamic Republic, or the beginning of something worse? Subscribe and turn on notifications. We will be back the moment something changes. Because right now, everything is changing.